for our last company, it really seems like hardly a day goes by when there's not some major cybersecurity crime, where somebody's computers are broken into. Obviously, a couple days ago, apparently Donald Trump and the Russians broke into the DNC's computers and released a bunch of emails. So so this is obviously a rising problem around the world. And our next company, surveilLens, Jamal. Oh, there you go. Is here to talk about surveilLens.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. So, yeah, as was just said, I'm sure if you all have been paying attention to the news lately, there's not been a shortage of not only cyber crimes, but also financial frauds or frauds against companies and whatever manner they may be, corruption, money laundering, theft by employees, theft by outside vendors or customers, against all of which dilutes shareholder value and causes companies to lose money, right? There's a study out there that the Certified Fraud Examiners Association puts out that says companies on average lose about 6% of their revenues to fraud each year, okay? So that amounts to billions of dollars each year, and on a global scale, if you would extrapolate that to global GDP, that's in the trillions of dollars, okay? So the question is, how do companies prevent fraud from occurring? Okay, how can they get out in front of fraud to prevent this loss of revenue? And I'll layer that in on top of this now is that governments and regulators are becoming increasingly more stringent on these companies, and they're requiring them to have good compliance programs in place to prevent fraud from happening, particularly if you're looking at in the financial services space. Right? We're sitting in a bank today, right? There's been a lot of action with respect to money laundering, okay? Banks are under a lot of heat for violating money laundering rules and or moving money to companies or countries or individuals that are on sanctions lists that you're not supposed to be doing business with. Okay, so these are the things that the government is looking out for, and they're expecting companies to be out and police themselves. And the consequences, as we're going to see in a couple of minutes, can be really devastating to a company. Okay, if they get caught and if they get busted for violating a rule or some sort of law, because there's a big process that has to go on once you get caught for violating a rule. There's a whole lengthy investigation process. You have to go in front of the government. It's a lot of money. So not only do you lose money from the fraud, but now you have to lose money investigating that fraud. Okay, and I know how much money, my partner and I know how much money that costs, because we're both in the business on the consulting side of working with companies to institute these compliance programs. So before we get into that, just quickly a little bit about us. Who are we? We're a company that was organized in 2013. Okay, myself and my partner, Vijay Sampath over here, combined, we're both forensic accountants by training. Okay, combined we have over 60 years experience in doing forensic accounting and compliance and auditing services for companies. So we do forensic accounting investigations of all kinds. When companies get into trouble for a fraud investigation or for a money laundering investigation or whatever sort of loss of some financial fraud, they call in companies such as the ones we used to work for, and we do the investigation. But as I'm going to show you, that method of doing investigation is outdated. It's becoming outdated. Okay. We also have now that we're in our new company, we have a team of 30 engineers and data scientists who have helped us develop this software that helps proactively look for fraud. So what are the issues? We started talking about the issues a minute ago. The issues are, as I mentioned, the governments around the world, not only in America, but around the world, are becoming more aware of fraud and how much it costs not only the company itself, but the shareholders, and how much it costs the public in general. Okay, so there is an increasing culture of compliance that's being put upon corporations globally. Okay, if you follow, certainly in the United States, if you're following if you follow the news, bribery is a big issue for U.S. companies, right? The government doesn't want U.S. companies to go out and make bribes in foreign countries to get business. That's a huge crime here. Well, now the UK has enacted a similar law called the UK Bribery Act, and other countries are following suit. Money laundering, I mentioned that a couple of minutes ago. Money laundering is a big problem globally. Okay, there's no shelter even in Swiss banks anymore, right? You can't put your money there because governments are becoming. They want to prevent terrorist financing. They want to prevent money from going out to other countries. Okay, they want to keep money in house. Okay, did you know that in the last 5 years, banks just like the bank we're sitting in today, have paid $150 billion in fines and penalties to the U.S. and state governments for violating compliance and legal rules. And a lot of that could have been prevented. A lot of the bulk of those fines were because the banks didn't have compliance programs in place that would have, in the government's view, prevented the money laundering or the fraud or whatever they got accused of, whatever law they got accused of violating from occurring. Okay, so that's a lot of money that the banks are losing. $150 billion. That's a lot of money that the shareholders are losing. Okay, so what are some of the ways that companies are looking now to achieve this compliance that's being put on them is that they're looking to become more proactive in compliance. Okay, they're looking to prevent the fraud from occurring before it occurs, to find out how it, to stop it from occurring, as opposed to waiting for it to occur and now going back and investigating how it occurred. But by that time, the money's already gone in a lot of cases. Okay, how are you gonna, if somebody's laundering money and they're sending it abroad and you catch it a month after they've done it, too late. And the government's gonna now come in and say, well, you should have, that's nice that you caught it, but you should have caught it before it occurred. Okay? So companies are looking for ways to become more proactive, okay? And they're also, in looking to become more proactive, they're looking for ways to, looking for cost-effective solutions to help them become proactive, okay? Some of the features of cost-effective solutions would be automated workflows, okay? So I can have if a payment goes out, all right, there should be a rule that triggers that if it looks like it's a suspicious payment, that payment should get flagged and it should get stopped in the system before it goes out for payment, and someone should look at that to just make sure that it's okay from going out, okay? Or if it's a transfer of money, someone should make sure it's going to a person that is not on a sanctions list, or not what we call a politically exposed person, okay, who's maybe in trouble with the law in some other country. Okay, they're also looking to become more aware of who they're doing business with. That's becoming a big increasing problem. The government wants governments around the world, they want you to know who are your third parties that you're doing business with. Not only your customers, but your vendors. Okay, do you know the person that you're paying in China? And I'm only using China as an example because it's the first country I can think of. I don't have anything against China, but do you know if that company in China is a legitimate company or not? How do you know that? What sort of work have you done around that? That's what the government. If it turns out that person, that vendor that you're paying in China is in fact a criminal, okay, or maybe a terrorist, okay, and now he goes out, takes the money that you've paid him and commits a crime or uses it for terrorist financing, okay, now the government comes in and says, well, you've actually essentially funded a terrorist operation. What did you do to prevent this from happening? What were your processes in place? How did you know that? What sort of diligence did you do on this third party? Okay, and if your answer is, well, I looked him up on the internet, and I didn't find anything, that's not going to be a very good response. Okay, and the government's going to hit you with the fine and penalty. Okay. One of the other areas that companies are looking for to achieve compliance is they want to use big data. I'm sure a lot of you have heard the term big data, right? The big data is just basically finding ways to use all the data in your company to help you achieve a more efficient operation, right? Well, we're taking the same concept of using big data, but we're using it to help you achieve a compliance, okay? So you have companies have a lot of data in their system, in their accounting systems, or in any other system that they have. they have structured data, which is basically their accounting data, and then they have unstructured data, which is all the data in their email system, okay, or all the data that they may have in their text, their instant messaging systems. Where our solution seeks to combine those two types of data to help you achieve compliance. So what's the problem with traditional compliance programs today? Okay, traditional compliance programs today that companies have to try to achieve compliance, they're mostly manual in nature. Okay, they don't make effective use of computer technology. Let me give the way it typically works. Is somebody will, a compliance officer will get there'll be a suspected fraud payment that goes out, okay? Somebody will say, hey, this payment looks like it was suspicious. It goes to somebody to review it, and he'll either say it wasn't suspicious or he'll say it was suspicious, but by that time, the payment has already gone out, you're out of luck, okay? The programs today also result in inconsistencies, error, and manipulation, okay? Different people might be if I have an operation in Russia and an operation in the US, and I see the same sort of transaction, the two individuals who are responsible for reviewing those transactions may look at it differently. And one may conclude that it's okay, one may conclude that it's not okay. This is by having an automated workflow, okay, you eliminate those inconsistencies, okay? A lot of companies have legacy systems. Okay, what do we mean by legacy systems? Basically, if a company grows by acquisition, you'll take the system or whatever of the company that you just acquired and bring it on as incorporated into your own. The problem is that if you do a lot of these, if you have enough of these legacy systems, none of them talk to each other. Okay, and that's particularly true in banks. Okay, banks have various, a lot of different businesses, right? They have retail banking. They have correspondent banking, they have private wealth management. Each of these divisions may have different systems. None of these systems talk to each other. So if I'm a customer of a bank, okay, and I'm in their private wealth group, and I'm a criminal, okay, I may be doing some shady activity in private wealth. But let's say I'm also a business. I also run a business, and I'm running that business in another division of the bank. Well, how do I know that the one division is talking to the other division to know that I'm truly, to get a total picture of my activity? That currently doesn't happen today in banks, okay? The data is very siloed, okay, or compartmentalized within each division, and they're also using old systems that don't talk to each other, okay? So, the legacy systems that they have are not built for monitoring and capturing transactions in real time, okay? They're always reactive in nature. And when the problem, as I mentioned, when you're reactive in nature, the money's already gone out and it's too late to catch the fraud, okay? False positives is another big problem with current programs today, okay? A false positive, for those of you who don't know, is when you say something is a fraud or a potential problem, but it's really not. Okay, now so a lot of times these systems some of the systems, to the extent that a bank may have, or a company may have a compliance system that results in that kicks up a potential fraud transaction, all right, it'll say, here's a fraud transaction. Now the company has to go spend money and resources and human capital to try to chase that system down, that transaction down to see if it's truly fraud. And then a lot of times it ends up not being a fraud, okay? So you want a system that reduces the amount of false positives that you have. So how does a compliance program, achieve all that, a cost-effective solution to compliance, right? That reduces false positives, looks at data, 100% of data in real time, okay? So that to give a company a holistic view of their compliance program. Well, that's where we come in, okay? We have an enterprise compliance, we've developed an enterprise compliance and risk monitoring platform that uses the latest technologies, okay, to proactively detect problematic transactions and help a company assess its risk, okay? in whatever industry it's involved in, okay? So that they can go out and at any moment in time look at what their compliance picture is, okay, all across the globe, okay, no matter what industry they're no matter where they are operating in the world, okay. Some of the things that the functionality that we have is we have machine learning capability, okay. We've developed an algorithm so that if you have the same transaction that gets repeated over and over again, eventually the machine's going to learn that that's not a fraudulent transaction. So that reduces the amount of false positives that you generate, and in turn that reduces the amount of resources that you have to spend trying to chase those transactions down, those potentially false transactions down. Okay. We have the program that we have has an intuitive user interface and workflow. All right. If you're a compliance officer and you're charged with overseeing the company's compliance program, all right, you don't want to walk into a solution and say, oh my God, what am I looking at? I don't understand this. All right. You want to be able to walk into your office in the morning every day and say, okay, here's my pain points. Okay, here are the issues that I have in Russia. Here's the issues that I have in my Brazil operation, or here's the issues I have in US. Okay, so the system that we have, which is totally customizable to what you want to see, you as a compliance officer want to see. Okay, and you can build and what you to show what you to see what you want on the screen. Okay, and then you can and it's totally easy to use. Okay, and for the individuals that are in charge of chasing down the transactions, also there are workflows that help them do that. So I started off by saying my partner and I have 60 years of experience as forensic accountants. That's what separates us from some of the solutions out there today. Okay, a lot of the solutions out there today have been designed by people in technology who think they know what companies want when it comes to compliance. Okay, we flipped it around. We are practitioners in the industry who work with companies in helping them achieve compliance, and we work with a team of technology experts to develop the system. Okay, so we bring the domain expertise using the latest technologies.
Hey Jamal, can you talk about where you are in terms of kind of the rollout of the product?
Sure. So we have one product that's fully developed and ready to go. It's a product that's if you're using an accounting system, and what we call it an ERP or an enterprise resource platform. Okay. So we're now looking to roll out into we're developing a financial services product that's geared towards money laundering and OFAC. We're also looking to get into the next area that we're looking to get into is healthcare. Okay, healthcare is a big industry, and this healthcare fraud, I should say, is a $100 billion industry in this country. And then we're also looking to get into develop another product for what's called foreign account tax FATCA, which is a new law which requires people, U.S. citizens who have accounts abroad, to report those accounts on their U.S. tax returns, and that's a huge area of concern. There's a lot of fraud that goes on there, so that's where we are rolling those out.
And how much is it that you're looking to raise?
We're looking to raise in this round between $1 and $2 million for which we're going to use towards marketing and developing those additional to get into those additional verticals or those additional use cases.
Okay, cool. Anybody, any questions? Any additional questions from the audience? Anything else you wanna mention?
I think I covered everyone. Do you have is there any proprietary? Right? Do you have what do you have? This tell us about the unique. You have the proprietary code, right?
Yeah, we have. So we've filed actually a provisional patent for the machine learning algorithm that we've developed, which I talked about, which reduces the amount of false positives that the machine generates, that the system generates. So if I'm doing a transaction with Lou, or let's say Lou is one of my vendors, and it comes up that it looks like he's engaging in fraudulent transactions, right? But I know that Lou's a good guy, right? So eventually, the more transactions that Lou does with me, eventually the machine will stop putting him in as a.
And that's because it's a plug-in to your accounting software, so as you're paying out, it basically, before you send a payment out, it runs a check. Like, is that how it works?
That's correct. It's not, and it's yes, in its most basic, that's how it works. If a payment, it'll stop the payment from going out, and someone will have to now go through and check that payment to make sure it's okay. But it's not only the accounting system; it's any type of, if we're talking about money laundering, it's the money laundering vertical or the use case, right? It's any transfer of money. Right?
It tests it against a database that is like a public database of suspected issues, like what's right, or is it just a database unique to that company?
It'll test it against a couple of things. One, it will test the third party that I'm sending the money to against a database of public. There'll be a publicly available database that it'll search against, right? So it'll search the internet. Does Lou come up as a bad person? Any negative media that may come up, any news articles that had Lou as a bad person. Also, we'll have a proprietary database that it'll search for Lou's name for. That's the one thing it searches for. But not only that, it also searches to see if the transaction has any characteristics of a potentially fraudulent transaction. So, very simply, let's say it's in the money laundering world. If you know anything about money laundering, if you've done any sort of compliance, there's a rule called structure. Okay, so if you try to send out you're not allowed to send out more than 10. Anytime that somebody wants to transfer more than $10,000 in a day, okay, the bank has to file a form. So a lot of people don't want the bank to file that form, so they try to what they call structure the transfer of money. They'll send $5,000 today, $5,000 tomorrow. Okay, so what our system does is it runs up this transaction. It'll run the transactions against a list of rules. Okay, a rules engine. Okay, and it'll see that this transaction has the parameters of a structuring transaction. So it'll flag it and stop it from going out until somebody clears it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, terrific. Thanks so much.
So